my pleasure to be in New Orleans at the Dewdrop Inn with Councilman Oliver Thomas for this week's Backyard Conversation.
Man, how do you like that? His historic location. I've heard my parents talk about the historic Dewdrop Inn entertainment social scene. It's good to be here with Gary Chambers, man. Someone who I call one of the ultimate brothers. Thank you for giving a darn.
Thank you. I thank you. I thank you for your leadership, for the friendship that you have bestowed in this last few years, and the knowledge, right? The history. I think it's fitting that we sit in this historic place because
Great point.
I think it speaks to the culture of the city of New Orleans. I think it speaks to the roots of this city, the Black culture that has vibrated through the soul of this city.
Through the world, man.
And created a flavor, right, that people talk about everywhere.
Yeah, a flavor like no other. And the Dewdrop represents that, but it also represents your fight for our kids, our families, our community economically. What's at stake now? The state of what's happening in this country, Louisiana.
So let's start right there. What is at stake in this mayor's race? You are running for mayor of one of the greatest cities in the world, one of the historically blackest cities in America. And there is a narrative around this city that it's in decline, that people are leaving the city, that people are trying to figure out which way are things going to go. There's been a direct attack on Black leadership in the city of New Orleans, and you have been in this in different iterations of this city. What is at stake in this mayor's race?
Well, the 3.5 years that I've been back in office, and I was out of office for 14 years, what I have noticed is that there's consistently an effort to make Black leadership, and it's not just here, it's around the country, corrupt, complicit, or incompetent. And in many cases, that's not just about race. That's about control of the economic opportunity. You and I were talking earlier about the disparity gap, right? And the opportunities that exist in urban America, especially in old cities. So what's at stake here is a couple things. My campaign is centered around a city that works. And we want it to work for everyone. I don't know what happened where basic services seem to fall apart, right? Where you can't get your trash picked up on time. You can't get a permit in less than 7, 8, or 9 months, sometimes a year. You can't get a 12-month street project done in 12 months. It's 3 and 4 years. You can't get the courtesy that you deserve. You can't get 911 calls in 10 seconds, which every second after that could mean life or death. But there's also an attempt, when you talk about old cities in control of the economic base, the work that has to be done. You and I talked about, in the past about there's no happens chance that all of the infrastructure work, the utility work, the maintenance work, the replacement work in old cities are going to be trillions of dollars in the next 20 years.
It's a lot of contracts.
And whoever controls the seat of the mayor's office, whoever controls those political seats is going to have a lot to say about who participates economically.
So how do you address the things you just mentioned? You talked about a city that works for everyone. How do you make city services respond for the people of New Orleans?
Well, the first thing you want is a group of people who are committed to public service. If you're committed to public service, you don't take off before it's time to get off, and you don't put 50% into the 100% that the citizens here deserve. And then the second thing you do is you take a look at affordability. Our city budget is growing, but the budget for everyday people, small businesses, their pockets are tightening. How do we continue to grow and say, give us more, but not put a cap on the economic suffering that's happening to folk in our community? I want to take a real look at that. I want benchmarks, performance plans. If you're working in a department, then even if you're civil service, I want to be a mayor that sits and gets together with civil service. Say, look, let's not just meet when there's a disciplinary action. Let's meet to talk about how that civil servant delivers a better product on time, efficient, not reconstruct, but reconstruct how government works, especially for people.
So I read through your plan, and you talk about a 90-day pothole guarantee. You talk about 911 response time. What unpack some of that for me? Tell me about the plan and how those things turn into a city that works for everyone.
Pothole thing is really important. It's not just a pothole. And we know that when you have a pothole, every time somebody drives over that pothole, there's a certain level of vibration that happens. It affects the street that it's on, continues to crack, right? Become in disrepair. It affects the utilities that underground. And as that pothole worsens, guess what happens to that vibration? Gets to the sidewalk, to the foundation of your house, to your home. So to not have a minimum of 90 days, what happens is, well, first of all, when you don't paint your house, it becomes in disrepair. And if you don't paint it, then the other things seep in. So it's like the broken windows theory. So the longer it takes us to deal with the pothole, the more it costs us in terms of neglect. And we can't let that happen. Now, the trash pickup, if you missed it, look, people are paying for 2 times a week trash pickup. They're only getting 1. I want to sit down with our trash providers, especially since the contracts are 2.5 to 3 times more. How do you make 2.5 to 3 times more and not give the people what they're paying for? Or let's take a look at seasonal. Seafood, crawfish is a real thing here. So the city is starting to smell like and look like, in many cases, one-day trash pickup when people are paying a week, when people are paying for twice. That's not a good look for us. Rodents, pests, inconvenience, definitely not something our people deserve.
You talk about working overtime to deliver this city. Mm-hmm. There's been conversation around, well, we should have someone younger. We should have somebody who he had his chance. Tell me why now is so urgent for you to run for mayor.
No, we should have everybody at the table. Younger, older, middle, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever religion or class you are. No, I don't want, no, Oliver Thomas, man, look, our table, everybody's going to help build their section of this table. A New Orleans that's going to work is going to have to include everyone. But when you talk about institutional knowledge, when you talk about how to connect the sanitation bone to the code enforcement bone, to the law department bone, when you talk about how to work with state government and our federal partners, no one has that level of institutional knowledge or work ethic. And overtime, I think for this campaign, means on time.
So you represent New Orleans East.
Mm-hmm.
And another topic of conversation has been New Orleans East has been in decline. You've been on the council now 3.5 years. Yeah. Respond directly to someone who would say he hasn't done enough in New Orleans East in the time that he's been on the council.
New Orleans East is part of the conversation now. I have never seen a mayor's race or a citywide race or public attention given to New Orleans East like it has now. And I did that intentionally. I wrote a piece a couple years ago to break the stereotype. We had over 1 million people read that about how unfair it was to stereotype that strong African-American community. We're leading in violent crime reduction right now. Let's celebrate that. We have Six Flags. Finally, it's not just a thought, there's a lease. Now it's up to the developer to move forward. Alvin Ross Studios has a lease with the developer. Lincoln Beach was a thought. They would come on my show to talk about Lincoln Beach. The 3.5 years I've been there, there's a strategic development plan, and it's funded. The Super Bowl, for the first time, had their Nike experience where? In New Orleans East. Now, we can always talk about what we don't have, but the thing that I've done is I've positioned New Orleans East for the explosion that when I'm mayor, an economic development office, where? In New Orleans East. Special taxing district and incentive programs, which is what mayors do in New Orleans East.
You just said something. That's what mayors do, right?
Correct.
And so there's limitations between what you can do as a council member and what someone can do as a mayor. And I think that that's important to unpack a little bit because we as a community listen to certain voices who are trying to create a narrative.
Great.
And I'm somebody from North Baton Rouge,
Mhm.
right? And so North Baton Rouge has had historically negative narratives. One of the things that I've consistently said is you can't talk about my community as a liability when we have all of these assets and then expect investment to happen in our community. If the narrative is discussing the liabilities of the community, that's an intentional narrative.
But we're on the same page there. I tell folk that how can you want the sun to shine when you keep walking around with an umbrella and waiting for rain? So at some point, we need to build on our assets. But the other thing is,
Tell me about those assets.
27 subdivisions of the highest African-American earners of any municipal district in this region, 7,000 acres of developable business park, 9.5 miles of waterway, 5 of those 9 miles of beachfront, 2 of the busiest waterways in North America. They're in the coastal and the industrial. They feed the 33-state tributary system. America can't survive without it. The largest wildlife refuge in North America, 340 bird species. So if birding is $1 billion industry around the world, we got the largest migratory period out in New Orleans East. Why can't we expand that? Ecotourism is part of our economic footprint. We're building on assets. We cannot continue to build on negatives. New Orleans East is an asset. Go east, young man. And especially when I put an economic development office in New Orleans East, that's where the growth has to be. First of all, New Orleans can't be whole without one of its largest communities being an afterthought. Can't be. Can't be whole with half.
Ninth Ward, Algiers, always
Absolutely.
A part of the conversation for me because those are also areas that don't get a ton of the attention from the resource department. How do you change that?
The Lower Ninth Ward, building on the wetlands park, what Sankofa's doing, what Arthur Johnson is doing with Bayou Bienvenue, their project working with young folk. It's available land. NORA controls a lot of the properties there. Let's dispense them. Historically, it was a strong home ownership neighborhood for African Americans, one of the strongest in the country. Let's build on its heritage. What Doris Hicks did to bring education back to the Lower Ninth Ward, but people like Reverend Calhoun and Miss Betty are doing to say, hey, look, we don't want a grain train destroying our neighborhood or environmental issues or jeopardizing people who are trying to come back. The Lower Nine is ripe. The Upper Nine is ripe. New Orleans East is beyond ripe. It offers the city a growth opportunity. And Algiers is not just on the other side of the river. Algiers is an important community to New Orleans.
How do you, as mayor, prioritize those communities in comparison to what we see today?
Well, the first thing to do is build on the relationships. Man, I have generations of families who live in each of those communities. I have cousins and friends who do business in those communities. I don't have to guess who they are or where they are. I know where they are, and those relationships are going to be strong. And then you need a mayor that doesn't legislate or administer from City Hall. You have to have a base in those communities, listening to people, working with people, and moving forward with people.
You just talked about something that you illuminated to in a forum the other day, working with people. You asked one of your competitors in the race, Helena Moreno, about her time as council president. You've tried to make things where people can work together, but you've also been willing to be a 6-to-1 vote, a one person against 6 other council members on the council. So explain to me what that dynamic looked like, why you asked that question, why it's important.
Well, my question there was that it's convenient to blame the mayor, to blame others when certain people don't have their way. But when there was an opportunity, when I put forth an opportunity to have a retreat twice so we could get in the room, other leaders on the...
Let me pause right there. You said an opportunity for the council and the mayor
Correct.
to have a retreat twice.
Twice.
Did it happen?
No, it didn't happen.
So when people say that there was an attempt to work together or the council attempted to work together, if they rejected an attempt to have a retreat, how is that?
Then that means it's not your intention is not to work together. You conveniently want to have someone to blame. Her position now in forums is that she couldn't do certain things because the mayor wouldn't let her, the mayor wouldn't work with her. But then on the other side, she'll blame me and other people for what's not done, but not accept the same responsibility for yourself. So I don't know how you have it six one way and half a dozen the other. I think when I offered those letters for the retreat, that was an opportunity to get in the room, and maybe we couldn't work together on 7 things, but maybe we could have found 3 where the public would have seen us united on their issues, and that's important.
I struggle with the ability of some to be able to capitalize off of every win and then take no responsibility for any of the losses.
That's a great point. And look, I understand as a Black man and an African American that the burden of proof is always higher amongst us. And in many cases, even from our own people, that they don't place the same burden or they don't place the same challenges or expectations on other folk who are not from our community. But the 4 years I wasn't on the council, why didn't you do what you're saying I didn't do?
We went and picked up trash together.
Yes, we did.
Before you were on city council, when the city was having a trash crisis.
Yes.
And for me,
I wasn't even on the council.
There was a very few people who showed up with me. I'm gonna get some B-roll to drop in on this,
right,
to show when we were in the 7th Ward, when we were in the community with a dumpster picking up other folks' trash when the city wasn't picking up trash.
Correct.
Was there a lawsuit at that time from the city about trash pickup the way that there was in the French Quarter?
No, there wasn't.
And Helena was the president of the city council at the time, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So she's been the longest standing council president.
So when the whole city was having trash problems, trash in their community, and nobody there,
it wasn't a crisis.
To pick it up.
It wasn't a crisis.
It didn't go to the Supreme Court then.
No, it was a crisis to us who lived in the community.
But now that the French Quarter has had some trash issues, it's an urgent issue that had to be litigated all the way to the Supreme Court.
Correct.
Okay.
The ability to pick and choose what's important and whose community is important is jeopardizing our ability to work together and move this city forward. I want to end that.
Do you think that some of the issues have been in some ways manufactured?
Oh, absolutely. It's part of marketing today. Look, most people who are good at manipulating the media and the people in the media, the first thing they know is that not only does the disparity work well against our people, but you can always stereotype our community. You can always stereotype Black men and Black women. You can always stereotype Black businessmen and women, no matter how exceptional they are, no matter how well they've done. And it's unfortunate that today people are using those old stereotypes and those old narratives to help their political cause. That's not going to fix us. It's not going to bring us together. And Gary, most important, it's not going to help make a city that works.
So, last thing I'll say on this subject, because you just illuminated being able to manipulate the media. There was an incident that happened at a church service yesterday. I'm not going to go into the incident,
right,
but I thought that it was ironic that Helena made a video to respond to that incident. And a few weeks ago, there was an incident you made a video to respond to where a white business owner in this community who supports Helena sent an email with some racially inflamed language to Royce Duplessis, also another candidate in the race. Right. You made a video and responded to that. That was a social media thing that I talked about. It became a conversation. It was such that you would respond. And I think that in the 21st century, when things are happening, we want leaders to be responsive,
absolutely,
right?
But not pick and choose.
Pick and choose what we respond to, right? When somebody sues your PAC, when somebody makes a $25,000 contribution to your PAC and then makes racially charged statements on behalf of raising money for you, you have nothing to say. But something takes place in the church services that disparages a Black man. Now you're making a video to help illuminate the subject. I just find that a bit strange.
Well, divide and conquer is real. I don't know this narrative that they use in this country and being used in this campaign that Black men can't get along. As a former athlete, I mean, I shook hands with my competitors, man, in Biddy, Nord, high school, college, and in summer pro leagues. After we competed, we pitted hard against each other, but we were not against each other. But that's part of the narrative. It's like with the email, right? You want to highlight what happened between two black men in the church, but you don't want to address the fact that your campaign is using reverse racism, right, to make sure to consolidate white vote and to raise money. Well, many of us remember the Donald Mintz campaign when they did that with Mark Morial. Donald Mintz tried to attribute the Morial campaign for doing some racist stuff until his campaign workers were actually caught with the material. That's an old trick that's moved forward. So when we think we've moved forward, here, that campaign is using that same old stuff, that same old narrative to try and divide us.
You know why, when I knew that I wanted to speak more on this race, was when I started seeing a deliberate attempt to try to convince black people not to want black leadership, right? In a state that is 33% black, New Orleans being our largest city, we have 5 cities that were our largest, and Baton Rouge had a black mayor. It no longer does.
Correct.
Monroe had a black mayor. It no longer does. Shreveport had a black mayor. It no longer does. Alexandria had a black mayor. It no longer does. And I want black people to be willing to have honest, direct conversations that, are our mayors or our leaders so terrible, or are people deliberately feeding a narrative to us that will make us diminish our leadership? To be clear, no city becomes what it is in a 4-year span.
Correct.
What we hope from a mayor is that a leader takes the time that the citizens allot them through their delegated authority and use it to advance a community.
Well, it's even bigger than that. Probably the biggest works program in Baton Rouge, especially that Alive program, as they called it, that happened under black leadership.
Oh, in Baton Rouge, I'm going to give a couple of things in Baton Rouge. You give New Orleans. So in Baton Rouge, under Kip Holden,
Absolutely.
Perkins Road was a two-lane highway before Kip became
Blank.
mayor. Downtown had hotels with strippers and prostitutes in the hotels. We had no hotels downtown before Kip Holden put TIFs downtown. There was no Burbank and all of that expansion that exists on that side of town. There would not have been a potential for a St. George to be anything more than a little town before Melvin Kip Holden was the mayor of Baton Rouge. And then if you count Sharon Weston Broom's billion-dollar road project that is being unveiled every day, new roads projects, those things happened under black leadership.
Well, in New Orleans, the growth of the expansion of the riverfront, that happened under Dutch Morial. The moonwalk is attributed to Moon, but you don't have, Moon can't walk the moonwalk without the vision of Dutch Morial. The convention center, the aquarium, the warehouse district, Mark Morial,
Black leaders.
Sidney Bartholomew, Dutch Morial. So this narrative about we don't contribute to anything other than being a black man or black woman in a suit or a dress is absolutely not true. But Byron Allen, one of the leading CEOs and chairman with Comcast, with cable, he talks explicitly about his quest, effort to build his brand and become the largest African-American in the cable and television industry. He used the 4 Ds. He said there was always this effort to dismiss him, discredit him, demonize him, and then ultimately try to destroy him. I don't know why that narrative is still prevalent today. It's not going to fix America, not going to fix this state, and it's not going to fix this city. We have contributed mightily. Poydras Street is the economic center of the state of Louisiana.
It is.
That happened under black mayors. Fact.
When we look at the history of our product, I think one of the proverbs I heard that the lion is always the hunter, is the lion is always the aggressor as long as the hunter is telling the story, right? And too often we don't realize that's happening. Let's go back to your plan. You talk about, I heard you say this one day and it froze me in my seat. You said that New Orleans used to be a city of 600,000 people.
Correct.
We have less than that now. We have room.
Correct.
Other folks are saying that they're going to build 40,000 houses. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
What is the number? And how do you make this city more affordable? How do you make this city that is not as large as it used to be more affordable for the people that are here?
Well, when I use the 600,000 people analogy, that's to let people know that we have 350,000 or so now. We have space. We have room for growth. We have room for affordable housing. We have room for more population, right? And then the other thing is it's not rocket science. We can use old formulas that worked under Dutch, Sydney, Mark, and in some cases even with Nagin. If we can target soft second money, reprogram CBDG funds for soft seconds, let's get together with many of the experts in housing. Let's bring them back to the table, the Ross Peshos, the Wilbur Thomases, the Lauren Andersons, the Fred Johnsons. Let's bring the banks back to the table to talk about their CRAs, like what used to happen. Let's work with housing nonprofits again, like they did under ACT when all the congregations, the Holy Ghost Initiative, the Baton Initiative, the Seventh Ward Initiative, what happened in Upper Nine. So these things are not new. I don't know why they went away, Gary.
You know, some folks, younger folks, you get criticism for, you tell a lot of stories, but those stories were things that worked for our community. Am I right?
Correct.
So give me the context of when that experience and that wisdom brings in the ability to move at a pace that others may not be able to
It's interesting.
move.
In some of the forums with certain groups, they're asking now, how does the new mayor not do like others have done and stop programs that work if it wasn't their idea? That's all I'm saying. If something worked in the past, I'm not only going to revive it, I'm going to build on it. So how it works is taking that institutional knowledge. Now, don't forget now, when we talk about building the new table, we got young folk and young innovators at the table. We got young developers at the table who can specialize in doubles, in triplexes, right? In small complexes and developments that fit. So when I talk about what was, I'm counting on what is and what will be to make what was relevant again and work again going into the 21st century.
So in essence, there were plans that existed before that people in New Orleans were winning from. It was moving things in the right direction. Rather than creating a new plan, you're going to go back to those plans, revive them with new players at the table.
Yeah, man, we have young entrepreneurs right now that, man, they are, look, their willingness to participate, their ability to participate, it's their table.
You know what I like about this? I didn't ask you about young entrepreneurs. You brought them to the conversation because I think that as a young entrepreneur, it's important to have leadership that's thinking about us. People who are looking to say, how are we bringing young people into the fold to be a part of this? Because too often there's this narrative around, well, we need more experience. How do we get that experience if we're not given an opportunity?
Old money is good for the people who have it.
Say that one more time.
Old money is just good for the people who have it. But new money make old money work.
I like it. I like it.
New money make old money work.
And we need that money to go to work, to deliver for the people.
And we need that. Look, young entrepreneurs, young investors, when old money see how creative they are and how ingenious they are and how exceptional they are, they're going to want to partner with that new money.
That's right.
So they can have more money, more money, more money.
Now, when we talk about Councilman Oliver Thomas becomes Mayor Oliver Thomas, what does that look like if a voter says, look, I'm on the fence, I like this young guy, I like some of the things I've seen. Why am I deciding that this person with this set of skills should be the mayor?
Don't need training wheels. Don't need someone to show me where the department is or what elevator to get off to get something done. My Rolodex is full. And I'm going to call a young guy, and I'm going to call a lady, and I'm going to call all the other 13 people in the race and everybody who's offered themselves and say, hey, come work with me to make this city the best place it can be that works for everyone. And then the last thing is, and I like to say this, God didn't give me another chance not to do it better, not to do it righter, and not to do it in a way that we can't be proud of this city. Man, I understand this piece. I'm doing this because I wanted to, but I wanted to work for all of us.
You said that God didn't give you a second chance. Let's go there. You went to jail. You had a conviction, but the people have brought you back on the council. There are those who have tried to use that as a navigating wedge to say, I won't vote for this man because he went to jail. What's your response to that?
Well, I went to jail, but I ain't stay there.
Okay.
I got knocked down, but I ain't stay down.
What did you learn?
What I learned was tremendous in terms of challenging myself as a human being, but also my thought process, man. The fact that I'm so thankful that my parents and many people who prayed for me to get up and be a better version of myself and what I am today. And Oliver Thomas didn't just do that alone, but also it gives me the ability to celebrate people, man, who thought that they were on their last or didn't have a chance. God didn't make any throwaway people. If we keep throwing people away, who's going to be left? Man, let's celebrate folk who get up. Let's celebrate folk who make mistakes and get over it. Let's celebrate people, man, who thought they were hungry, thirsty, weren't invited in. And let's celebrate those ex-offenders or people who have made mistakes because their citizenship matters, their contributions to this 21st century matters. And if you're in government, their taxes matter. So let's treat them like it.
You know, I think that we have this narrative around perfectionism that we've pushed for in leadership that one is unrealistic. And I think it contributes to why we're so disappointed when something happens, right?
Great point.
Because I'm not looking for a perfect leader, but I am looking for a leader that's willing to stand up 6-1.
My barber, Wade Crutchfield at Palms, and man, shout out to all of the stylists, man, and all of the beauticians and barbers, man. They give us our therapy, right? He said one day he was cutting my hair. He said, man, you know what? I want to fly the plane that they fixed because I know that one ready to take off. This plane ready to fly. It works.
Let me, before we roll, 6-1 votes.
Yeah.
You've taken a few of those where you were the only council member against your colleagues.
Right.
Unpack why that's important and why you took some of those positions where you were the only person to take a vote and the other colleagues went a different.
Great question. I have a great working relationship with Chief Kirkpatrick right now. She's earned my respect. Crime stats are going in the right direction. But I thought Michelle Woodfork had earned the right to have that job. She had us on a downward trajectory of violent crime and overall crime. She seemed to be in command of a department.
So you were 1-6.
Yes.
For Michelle Woodfork.
Correct. Michelle Woodfork had earned the right not only to get consideration, but to continue the job, especially since we were on a downward trajectory for crime and we were heading in the right direction. Shout out to Chief Kirkpatrick. I have a great working relationship. Her and I walked the district together.
And you chair criminal justice.
I chair criminal justice.
And crime in the East has gone down while you chair criminal justice.
In the last 10 years to an all-time low. New Orleans East right now is not leading in overall violent crime. The police chief will tell you that we have made immeasurable strides to debunk that stereotype of the East as a crime-ridden area. And I wish people would stop doing that because it affects investors.
You have been 6-1 on what else?
6-1 on the Richard's garbage contract disposal. When he lost his contract, he had put forth that he wanted a 1-year extension, which was the option that the administration could have worked with him on. But what he put on the table was tremendous. He said a potential $19 million savings. He would go back to twice-a-week pickup, and he would retrofit his equipment with all of the modern additions that they needed to pick up trash. I asked for an extension so that just to investigate, to have a meeting to take a look at the potential $20 million savings, maintaining this African-American businessman in one of the largest contracts, and how do we look at having benchmarks for him to make sure that some of the issues he had moving forward? My colleagues went against me, brought it up without even looking into the $20 million savings, which we had that $20 million savings now because we're looking at a budget deficit. And they voted against me. I voted for it.
Any others?
The River District. the River District sounds good, but when you look at the calculation of the money that's going back into the River District, the affordable housing component of it was, I mean, the people who did the math said there would be between $600 and $630,000 per unit. But you know what we could do with money that was, say, an affordable apartment complex would be $630,000. And then for me,
Stop right there.
Yeah.
So there was a plan to spend $630,000
per affordable
per affordable unit. You were the only vote
Yes.
to vote against that,
Correct.
while the other 6 members of the council voted for the River District. And now they're finding out.
That I was right.
Okay. Okay.
And now they're finding out in some of it, but the press, and this is where the press is involved now, especially when you talk about discrediting Black leadership. Our newspaper, our mainstream media would not give me credit for what I saw on my vote. They would give other council members credit for raising objection, but not saying that they voted for it.
To me, if you now raising objections after the fact, but you didn't have the vision or the foresight at the front to see that it was a deal that we shouldn't have went for,
Correct.
I think that's a very clear example of how Oliver Thomas is working for you versus
Absolutely.
other folks working for special interests or whatever development that they believe is going to serve their interests at that time.
But it also shows how mainstream media is trying to influence this election.
Even more direct.
Trying to influence this election.
If you are on the council and Helena is the vice president of the council and she votes 6 with these folks, 1 where you don't vote,
Right.
and we're talking about a project about $600,000 per unit. That is a clear example of where Oliver Thomas is focused more on working class, everyday people versus the other folks that are there.
And the people in the neighborhood said that. They celebrated that. They gave me an event and thanked me for that. But for me, it's always been me
and Senator Duplessis brought this, am I right?
Yeah, he was the creator of the River District.
So if we want to look
from the state's perspective.
From the state's perspective, Senator Duplessis brings the deal. Councilmember Moreno votes for the deal. Councilmember Thomas, candidate, future mayor of New Orleans, Thomas,
Right.
votes against that.
Correct.
Because it's not for the interest of people.
Absolutely.
I'm slow cooking that on purpose because I think that there's so many things that we rapidly deal with on social media or many conversations that go out there that don't allow us to see a clear example of how leadership works and where people are actually making decisions that impact our lives.
Well, I say this all the time, especially given the media bias that we have in this town. Your vote actually shows where you are.
That's right.
The one thing a politician has is their policy that they initiate and their vote. And the media has even tried to manipulate that for their own political purposes. And this is a time and an age now where social media and a false narrative can actually make people think something that not only wasn't, isn't, and can't be.
In closing, when we look at the future of New Orleans, after 4 years of a Mayor Thomas, what has happened for people in the city of New Orleans?
New Orleans East, the Lower Nine, and Algiers are not an afterthought anymore. They're part of the expanding economic and social footprint for the city of New Orleans. Those areas will have an economic development a satellite, or New Orleans East specifically will have an economic development office that gives the business community and investors the opportunity to build on the assets there. You're going to have, when you talk about a city that works, you're going to have streets projects that are done on time and on budget. A 12-month project, if a 12-month project takes a year and a half and 2 years, that contractor will not work for the city anymore. Those people who are supposed to program, manage, and monitor to that contract will not work for this mayor again. Safety and permits, if you apply for a permit and you've been in good standing, we're going to issue a provisional permit while you have 1 or 2 boxes left to check. Why can't we do that? You're not going to wait 6, 7 months or a year and a half to get a permit, especially when you've been in good standing. You call 911, it's 10 seconds. Anything after that, we know could be life or death. Your trash, if they don't pick up, you're paying for 2 times a week trash. If they don't pick it up on the one day, you're not going to have to wait till till your day the next week. 48 hours, someone will come back. And let me say this. If our trash contractors can't be respectful, making more money, then we'll figure out a way how to get some of these young folk involved and maybe bring that service back to the city so it's affordable. This mayor is going to sit down with our public utilities, water board, energy. How do we cap some of these rising utility rates while people's very livelihood are in jeopardy, that like they're being forced out of this community? We're going to sit down with the governor and the legislature. What can I do to help these rising insurance costs? I know that the city's not over it, but there has to be a collective effort, right, to stabilize them so they're not running seniors and elderly couples and retired people out of their homes. And then ultimately, you're not going to have to ask for a seat at the table. It's going to be your table. A city that works for everyone is where everyone is consulted, included, and expected to participate. I'm also going to challenge our people. What can we do to make sure we pick up the trash in front of our house? What can we do to volunteer with schools and mentoring and be the better partners with our children? When God said train up a child, he didn't say your child. Let's reach out to those children who need us.
You brought up young people, and the conversation often goes to, what are we going to do for our young people, our young youth in the city that Buckles did a documentary, Katrina Babies. And in the conversation around when New Orleans was the most murderous city in the year a few years ago, when that documentary dropped, it only made me think of all of the Katrina babies that were becoming of age that nobody had cared for all these years. All these kids who had been forgotten, neglected. And as we just passed the 20th anniversary, I think that you discussing what are you doing for those young people?
Well, first of all, Buckles, shout out to Andy Bean Theater. He came up under us. A brilliant young man. Our Katrina babies, they were our babies. Now they need to be our partners. When you make babies, when you make young men and women your partners, then their consideration is your consideration. Their plan is your plan. Your plan is their plan. They're not an afterthought of our babies anymore. They are the keepers of this castle. And they need to have a key to the front door, a seat at the table, and build a new table. I hear you with the term Katrina babies. Nah, man, but that's our young men and women right now. And they ought to be respected as such and treated as such.
And I only reference it as that because that's the name of the documentary.
Yes.
I think also when you talk about NORD, want to go into what you plan to do around NORD.
I'm a product of NORD. We can't have a city that works without a viable recreation department. NORD, if you got a park in your playground, there needs to be some events, some activities, some teams, some organized program. Let's survey those neighborhoods again. Let's find out, especially the ones that used to have booster clubs, that used to have coaches, that used to have activity. Let's get back to those communities and reprogram. But also, let's have 21st century NORD. Kids aren't just doing traditional sports anymore. Let's add soccer, dance, yoga, wellness, esports. So I want to know that work. I want the grass cut. You know, folk will tell you years ago, man, how I went to a game and the grass wasn't cut and fleas were out there, and I went nuts. And the next day they came out and did it. Because I'm a kid, I played on those fields, those gyms, those parks, those stadiums. That gave me my foundation to be who I am and what I am now.
So what I understand from reading your plan in this conversation, 10,000 affordable units of housing, response time from 911 increase, a pothole guarantee, provisional permits for people in the business if they have a challenge getting their business.
Access to early child education for every child.
Economic Development District in New Orleans
Economic Development District in New Orleans East. Algiers and the Lower Ninth Ward being planned as part of the city. Parks program there with activity from esports to traditional sports, soccer, dance, wellness. Oliver Thomas working overtime for a city that works for all of us. OTforus.com, baby.
Now that sounds like a plan that works for the people. I am asking you to get out and support Oliver Thomas for mayor of New Orleans in this year's election. I want to say thank you to the Dewdrop Inn, this historic landmark here in New Orleans, for allowing us to film this week's Backyard Conversation here with Councilman Thomas. This landmark historically started as a barbershop, became a hotel and a lounge. The history so rich of this black-owned institution.
Man, first of all, thank you to the owners and everyone here with Dewdrop, man. This is really just a great place. I enjoyed being here with you, Gary. But the history of this location, man, from Dave Bartholomew, Fats Domino, Ray Charles, thank y'all for not only preserving this place, but giving us another venue where we can relive that history and also be part of the future. Dewdrop, man, we honor you guys. Thank y'all.
A black-owned institution that you get to support today.
And so support the people who support us.